All right, get this. Bitcoin hit $100,000 in 2024.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
We're going to deep dive into like how that even happened and
Yeah.
what it could mean going forward.
I'm excited.
Yeah, you sent me some pretty interesting articles. This one from Hoken is particularly
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it reads like a financial thriller,
It really does.
Kind
Kind of taking you through the whole year.
What I think is really fascinating is how Bitcoin went from like barely surviving 2023,
Right.
That was a tough year for
It
crypto.
was a rough year for everybody.
Yeah, it was a rough year for the whole global economy.
Yeah.
But to see Bitcoin come out of that and then suddenly become this like global store of value in just 1 year,
Yeah.
the Hoken piece really highlights some key factors that I think even seasoned investors might find surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's set the stage a little bit. It's early 2024.
Okay.
The world is still kind of reeling from all the economic craziness of 2023, but things are starting to calm down just a little bit.
Yeah, the anxieties of 2023. Remember, we had inflation, we had rising interest rates, geopolitical uncertainty. It was a lot.
It was a lot.
And, as those things started to ease, it created this really interesting opening for Bitcoin because people were looking for a safe haven.
Okay.
They wanted something that felt solid in a world that was anything but.
It's like people were coming out of this storm looking around for something they could actually rely on.
Totally. And, the Hoken piece really captures that sentiment.
Okay.
They describe Bitcoin as this like digital fortress in a world of financial storms.
Yeah.
And that image really resonated with a lot of people.
Absolutely. So with that backdrop, what were some of the key events and milestones that kind of propelled Bitcoin toward that, $100,000 mark?
Yeah.
The Hoken article points to the SEC finally approving those spot Bitcoin ETFs.
Oh, yeah, in
January 2024.
Huge turning point.
Huge.
For a long time, a lot of institutional investors were kind of stuck on the sidelines because they wanted to get into Bitcoin, but they needed a more regulated, more familiar way to invest. Yeah. And the ETF provided that. And suddenly it was like the floodgates opened.
Yeah.
You had pension funds, hedge funds, all these big players could now easily get exposure to Bitcoin.
But there was still some skepticism, right?
Yeah.
The SEC had been rejecting these Bitcoin ETFs for years.
For years. What changed?
That's a great question. There were a few factors at play. I think one, Bitcoin itself was maturing.
Okay.
It had survived multiple crashes at this point.
Yeah.
And it was proving to be more resilient than a lot of critics expected. And then you also had the regulatory landscape evolving.
Okay.
Governments were starting to realize they couldn't just ignore Bitcoin.
Right.
They had to figure out how to work with it.
Yeah, and so you have more institutional money flowing in.
Yeah.
And then in April, you have the halving.
Oh, yeah, the halving. Now, for our listeners who might not be, crypto experts, can you break down what the halving is?
Yeah, so the Bitcoin halving, it's this event that's baked into Bitcoin's code essentially every 4 years. The reward that Bitcoin miners get for securing the network gets cut in half.
So less Bitcoin is being created.
Exactly. And that reduction in supply, when you have steady or increasing demand, it puts upward pressure on the price. It's this built-in scarcity mechanism.
Classic economics at play.
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand.
Yeah.
And then things got really interesting in November.
Oh, yeah, November.
In the U.S. election.
Big time.
Donald Trump gets reelected, and he ran on a very pro-Bitcoin stance.
He campaigned on making the U.S. like a crypto haven.
Yeah, which resonated with a lot of voters.
A lot of voters.
So what did those promises actually look like in terms of policy?
Well, one of the key proposals was a tax break for long-term crypto investors.
Okay.
He also talked about streamlining regulations for crypto businesses and creating a task force to explore the potential of blockchain technology for government services.
Wow, that's a pretty big shift from previous administrations. So did any of these proposals face pushback?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Critics argued that the tax break would mostly benefit the wealthy and that this crypto haven idea could attract bad actors looking to exploit the looser regulations.
So it was a mix of excitement and apprehension.
Definitely a lot of uncertainty, but the market seemed to love it.
They did. Confidence was soaring.
Yeah.
And all eyes were on that $100,000 mark.
Yeah, everyone was watching.
And then bam, December 5th.
Bitcoin smashes through the ceiling.
It was a historic moment.
$100,000.
What's interesting to me is going through all these sources, it wasn't just about the price going up.
Right.
It felt like a fundamental shift.
It was.
In how people were perceiving Bitcoin.
Yeah, it was a confluence of events, right?
Yeah.
You had the easing of monetary policy by the Fed, declining inflation in the U.S., growing unease about traditional banking systems. All these things kind of contributed to Bitcoin's rise.
It was like this perfect storm for Bitcoin in a way.
Yeah, and the Hoken Tech article makes a really interesting point.
Okay.
About how Bitcoin, as this decentralized censorship-resistant system, offers a level of freedom and control that traditional finance just can't match.
Yeah, so what does this all mean for the average person?
I mean, it means that we're potentially witnessing a redefinition of global finance.
Wow.
Bitcoin and the technology behind it are challenging the very foundations of how we think about money and value.
So is Bitcoin the future of money?
I don't know if anyone has a crystal ball.
Right.
But one thing is for sure.
What's that?
2024 was just the beginning of a very fascinating journey.
Absolutely. And for you listening, we encourage you to keep exploring this world. The story of Bitcoin is still being written. Maybe you'll even be a part of it.
Yeah, who knows what the future holds.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
For another deep dive.
Yeah, this was fun.
We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.